Is a SCOTUS, is a Supreme Court with a 6-justice conservative majority set to reshape America as we know it, as we were just talking about? Elizabeth Wydra is the president of the Constitutional Accountability Center, and she joins us from Washington, D.C. Elizabeth, you take it up from there. This is the first time we have had all 6 conservative justices in one place from day one. Explain to our audience the difference in a court with a 5-justice majority and one with a 6-justice majority.
So first of all, it's great to be with you. I think the answer to that question is on the fact that we're hearing these arguments today in the Supreme Court about whether to overturn Roe versus Wade. When we had a 5-justice conservative-leaning majority in the Supreme Court, we saw the court turn away big challenges like the one they're hearing today and reaffirm the longstanding precedent of Roe and Casey that protects the right to abortion. And now with the change in justices, with a 6-justice majority, 3 justices put on the bench by Donald Trump, we see them taking up this explicit, straight-on challenge to Roe versus Wade. And Justice Sotomayor, brought it right to the fore in her beginning questions in this morning's arguments about whether or not the country can have faith in a court that seems to change its view of the law simply when there is a change in justices, rather than looking at the Constitution's text, history, and structure. And when it comes to rights like abortion, rights like marriage equality, which Laura is exactly right, I think are definitely on the table when you have such a reactionary court as we could see, depending on where the court rules in the Dobbs case and in the Texas abortion case. Those are rights that are inherent in the equality and liberty that are protected specifically by the 14th Amendment, but the Constitution more broadly. And it's a really frightening and devastating prospect to think of a court that could turn back all that progress that generations of activists, abolitionists have worked so hard to put into our Constitution and to get protected by the law.
Elizabeth, something has changed, though, with regards to Roe that has caused the change in polling, which is that you hear women saying, I do not support abortion, but I don't want a man telling me to do with my body what I should be able to do myself. Is that the pendulum that is swinging in this argument, not necessarily the viability of the fetus, which is one argument, but also who has the right to tell a woman what to do with her body? Because when Roe was passed, it was pro-life versus anti-abortion, pro-abortion, and then it became pro-life versus anti-abortion. Have we now seen a pendulum swing where women are saying, I don't care what side of this argument you're on, I have the right to decide to do what I want to do with my own body?
So I think it's not just women. I think it's people in general are recognizing that this is a decision that is fundamentally a personal, individual decision about the course of one's own life. And people talk about abortion being a divisive issue in this country, and that might be true in some respects, but it's actually not divisive in the sense that a majority of Americans have, for quite a while, and certainly today, supported the idea that this decision, and whatever decision is a decision made by the person who is carrying the child, a person who is trying to decide for themselves their own destiny. And, I think that's really the North Star that we should think about as this case goes through the Supreme Court, as we debate these issues. The North Star for us is the right to reproductive liberty and bodily autonomy protected by the 14th Amendment. It's part of the idea of what does it mean to be free? And the 14th Amendment, after the Civil War, after the end of chattel slavery, was answering that question by saying part of what it means to be free is to be able to determine for oneself whether, when, with whom to have a child. And the right to abortion is inherent in that fundamental liberty and equality. People need to have that decision-making authority in order to participate as equals in this nation. And that's what's protected. The viability line is in service of that North Star of equal rights.
Elizabeth, I have been in this town long enough to hear the hair on fire arguments on both sides of this debate, on both sides of Obamacare. I can remember when the court was taking up Obamacare, 40 million people were going to lose their health care. And John Roberts, of all people, sided with the liberals on the court, and that case went away. Is this really a hair on fire moment, or is this just two sides with great lobbying efforts gearing up the troops to fight the abortion battle one more time?
I think that the fact that the court is listening to arguments today about whether or not to overturn Roe versus Wade certainly shows that this is an urgent moment. And as Laura was just saying earlier, it's not just about Roe, it's also about other fundamental rights. Justice Sotomayor raised that already in questions that she asked the lawyers this morning in the abortion case. So I think it's appropriate to be extremely concerned. And frankly, we're already seeing people in Texas being denied their constitutional rights that are protected by Roe because of the anti-abortion and the most restrictive abortion regulation in the country already going into effect with the Supreme Court's blessing in Texas. So I think what we're seeing is the possibility that constitutional rights will not be a reality for some people in this country. And that is extremely concerning. And I think it's appropriate to be extremely concerned here. And it's appropriate for the court to feel that pressure. We look to the court to apply the law, to apply the Constitution, and not change that just when they get enough justices on the court who might fit with their personal political conservative agenda. And here, when the Constitution so clearly protects these fundamental rights of bodily autonomy, reproductive liberty, equality, we expect the court to apply that and not change precedent that's been on the books for nearly 50 years in the case of Roe in order to fit a political agenda. So I think it's appropriate to be very concerned. I think it's appropriate to be watching very carefully what the court is doing. And I think it's appropriate for the court to feel that pressure. All the court has is respect. It doesn't have an army. It doesn't have the budget that Congress has to, implement its decisions, other than simply public confidence in the court. And if the court overturns a precedent like Roe that generations of Americans have relied on, who take almost as a given as part of their equality, then that confidence will be shaken gravely.
And their approval rating is now 40%, according to the latest Gallup polls. Elizabeth Wydra is the president of the Constitutional Accountability Center. Elizabeth, thanks for being with us, and we will be right back. You are watching DC Today.